we're like skeptical and we're thinking this is weird. We were around probably like as kids when the internet first came out, right? And so, but the people who are like 20, right? They're like full adults with enough education and they're way more like savvy about things, because they had the iPhones were around since they were like 10 years old. And so yeah, like they don't have any memory of any of this janky shit and so like they immediately land upon the world like ready to go. And then it's so interesting to me because I'm noticing that big time with it's some kind of fusion between all these tools. Like it's um, Zoom, Instagram, Discord, Twitter, and then boom, crypto is like money. Let's just start working. Like this last year was the final piece because the money part was making everything so janky. You couldn't really do business with people out. Like, have you ever tried to like, uh, have you ever used like Upwork or Fiverr?
Mm, I've,
It's it
I've,
it
yes.
it's janky as hell. The closest thing we have to like somewhat smooth international commerce that's like slick and without thinking and including the trust is maybe Airbnb, where like
Mm,
I landed in Odessa, and I hadn't before I came to Istanbul, and Odessa, Ukraine, this summer, and I hadn't like booked anything, and so I was booking Airbnbs, and it turned out like in that city, people would open Airbnbs and like forget about them, and then but like Airbnb's stupid system would like keep their things live, and so you see
uh,
like reviews and stuff, and I guess I didn't check like the dates or whatever, so people would not even cancel; they just wouldn't reply, and I was last minute booking Airbnbs. And so I ended up having to pay out of like a lot for like hotels and stuff because people just wouldn't answer. But I never had actually need to follow up. But I never had I need to follow up with Airbnb. But I never had a question of whether or not like Airbnb would reimburse me because I had like the trust in the Airbnb system. And so that's why like something like that works where you can just straight up like fly to another country, just stay at some random foreigners, like you're the random foreigner, you're just like staying in their like extra bedroom. That kind of slickness is like now going into everything else that wasn't really possible before these like hyper like these giant liquid markets. You know what I mean?
mhm. Yeah, this dude has, I got really excited talking to him because he has a very similar vision as me for the space to like to bring people into it and empower them. And he's thinking specifically like about people from the continent and how they can find some way to empower themselves financially and have access to something that they can actually build income through. And maybe like with this project he wants to shine a light on the Yoruba people. And the Yoruba, it's a tribe in Nigeria,
Mm.
and that's what this guy's
Isn't it
saying.
the
He's
is it the
the
biggest tribe in Nigeria?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And
I think
he
my nanny was Yoruba,
oh yeah, yeah.
or she was our
I went
nanny
to
for like
college.
an hour for like like one for like 6 months or something. But she was one of many.
Mm,
Sorry, go ahead.
yeah. So he has a bunch of people who are very artistic, and they want to, they're all kind of doing these sort of charity driven but also business driven ventures that they have. And he wants to just create a DAO to give people a way to participate in the crypto space through kind of like this format that maybe seems a little safer than just jumping into it by themselves. So I'm trying to teach him the ways
Can
of
I just tell
Solana.
you? Yeah, yeah, go ahead. You
Oh,
teaching them the ways of Solana what?
yeah, because he said I was looking at Ethereum, and like Nigerian people don't have a lot of money, and they don't. It's like I don't think it's worth it for them. But then also he was saying too, in Nigeria, crypto is banned. So they have to find ways to buy the Solana from like some kind of centralized exchange that they don't need KYC for. So I didn't even think about that. Like,
This is the biggest issue, which is you first need to get your fiat into a crypto, and then you can swap them, right?
yeah,
But like until you, and that's the biggest thing in the interview that the Coinbase CEO did a month ago, Brian Armstrong. He was basically like I think he was like he just mentioned that he was like as one of their top three like things that they're doing is maintaining the fiat on ramp into crypto, and that's I think the biggest thing is once you're in, once you have money in any major crypto form, then it's just a matter of you might pay like swap fees or whatever the more turns you have to do to get to the crypto you want, but once it's in, that's it. And then like um the biggest issue with these so centralized exchanges in my opinion have a major role to play in getting fiat into, like a dex is not going to get you, you have to first get into crypto through like through some sort of centralized exchange, and then um and then you're golden, because like yeah, once you have Solana or Bitcoin or Ethereum or whatever, you can then convert that into USDC if you want to like a stable coin. And especially with Circle's USDC, you basically, I think they're at like 80 or 90%. I have to check the latest numbers, but like a problem with Tether was like they said they had dollars, but it was like actually dollar denominated, like GE debt or whatever. And they were making money on the interest rates on these like junk bonds. So it's like not real dollars. It's not like when you when you go to your local Wells Fargo in America, like in your bank account, it wouldn't show like, yeah, I know you put $1,000 in your savings account, but actually we took that and then put it into like GE junk bonds. You'd be like, no, I didn't ask you to put my savings account into a junk bond, just like $1,000 is $1,000. So anyways, USDC is actually and then like I think there's going to be a bunch of copycats of USDC, right? So I think the latest was PayPal just announced that they're going to be basically do something just like that. But
oh
once you
yeah,
have something in USDC, like you've got, okay, you have to deal with inflation and all that stuff, but it's like the most legitimate, in my opinion, stable coin, right?
you have to find
So
a way to get
it's
that.
not that complicated. Huh? What'd you say?
You have to find a way to be able to get that. And if you like, I'm right now, he brought up that problem, and he said, and I don't want to have this attached to people's like real name. Like he wants to keep the decentralized, like he wants to make it anonymous so people don't have these like crypto records on their actual names, because he wants people to participate in the space but not be known, you know.
They want to keep pseudonymity, but the thing is like I think there are some services that do that for you, where you can send in like this is like a lot of this stuff started with like Bitcoin, which is like you on ramp, let's say with Coinbase or whatever, and then there's this like centralized mixer service you can pay where it'll send in your Bitcoin that's like, and then it'll anonymize it, and then like it'll send it to another random wallet that you control that's not connected to your name. So like they'll know, like if you look at the ledger, it'll say, okay, this wallet or whatever that's attached to, and then they go and look at like Coinbase's like KYC roles, and they say, okay, that's your name attached to that Bitcoin. Then it gets sent into this like box that these companies have, and then it's all, everybody's shit is mixed up, and then it spits out random Bitcoins to random wallets. And
Mm.
so I guess you can say, oh, I know, you cannot clearly see after you go through this, like it's like a like laundering service basically, where you won't know, you can assume if you're like the IRS that, oh, you sent in 1 Bitcoin, so you own 1 Bitcoin, but then it's sent out to a wallet, and then they can't know whether you then lost that 1 Bitcoin through bad trading, or because they don't know which wallet is the one that has your Bitcoin in it, right? And so then it's like an anonymizing service or something. And there's gonna be like there's got to be some sort of um yeah, like the whole there has to be, it might end up being that like most law enforcement will just have to give up the idea that they're going to enforce crime strictly through tracking money. They'll have to just do it all the other ways. Do you know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like they've, in my opinion, they've overly relied on um tracking money as like a way to like do like to track crimes, whereas like it's just one of many tools. You can still like, you know, observe them or whatever. Same with the US like sanctioning system. We end up like now sanctioning ourselves with like hyper sanctioning every random uh you know, horrific thing that all the peoples of the world do. We just like randomly start like firing these sanction bullets at people, and it's like at the end of 25 years of doing that, like we're the most sanctioned people on some metrics. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Anyways,
Yeah.
that's my rant.
Oh, that's cool. I'll have to talk. And then I remember hearing about Monero too, but like in order to do Monero, like you still would have to get USDC somehow or something. Right?
What is Monero? I forgot what that is.
I don't know a ton, but I just remember hearing that it's like it's a privacy coin where they're trying to like make
Oh yeah.
the blockchain transactions private rather than
And
being
Zcash is also puts that front and center, which I think is important. Like you really don't want your bank accounts and stuff public. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like you have some amount of your wealth is in public registers. So like you can look up who owns what property and who's supposed to pay that. And so like there's some kind of balance between like some community transparency, like people want to know who's owns what assets, but then they all you definitely need some amount of privacy because you know i don't I don't think you'd have to be a fool to not understand the value of some minimal amounts of privacy. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So um okay, let talk to me about crypto world. What have you been up to in the world of NFTs?
It's been interesting this last month. I feel like a lot more money has flown into the system, like to Solana NFTs specifically, and it's caused a few mints to really stress the system. And so I
What
can see
happened?
the
What
difference.
was what do you mean?
There's been a
How did the
few
mint
times
stress?
where everyone's trying to do transactions all at the same time, basically.
Because a
Everyone,
mint is launching?
because like multiple big mints are happening, and there's this one company called Genesis Go that they are kind of part of the validation network of Solana. They've kind of integrated themselves into the validation network of Solana, and they did an NFT drop too. And they so a lot of NFTs are using their systems to create their launches and to do their launches on. But if their code isn't like exactly perfect, then there's a bunch of problems that happen. And because a lot of times people are just rushing to get these projects out, even the big ones that have a lot of hype, they can just crash. Like I mostly with me, there's a thing you do where it's called minting manually. And minting manually is where you just wait for the link to drop from the
And then you click
Discord
on it,
server,
and then you're
and then
dropping
you
your wallet and approving, right?
mhm,
That's the way
and
you
then
do it on Bonfida, right? When you're
yeah,
buying your
But
And it's
then there's also
stressful.
like,
It's effing like a lot of work. The adrenaline dump when I'm in the bidding, when I'm in a bidding war against people, the amount of adrenaline that's dumping into my system, I'm like so exhausted at the end of these, you know? So I'm like,
and
I really don't ever want to get into auctions with people
yeah, and
because
I don't really do the auctions that much. It's just mostly event.
emotionally, either you feel uh you don't feel good either way. Either you feel poor because you lost it and someone in the world screwed you, or you feel like, oh, you won it and you're like, then you're like, did I overpay? Did I just like, is this thing actually worth what I just did? It's like it emotionally it's a very it's not the way I want to do commerce at all.
Yeah, and that's why I like the minting thing, because it's like it's a set price, but then
And
you
it's just
just
about
it's
the
first
speed.
come, yeah, first serve. And so now a lot of
You're just doing Black
tools.
Fridays all the time. That's all you're doing. You're just buying
Yes.
PlayStations at like 50% off and then turning around and hawking it on the curb right in front of the Walmart.
So there's, I guess, yeah, there's this idea that there's all these tools now that people are building to where you can mint using the command lines directly instead of using the interfaces from the websites. And so there's projects are fighting against those. But what I had this mint 2 days ago that was really big, and usually the most I've had to open is like maybe 4 or 5 tabs at the same time and just duplicate the process, like open the tab, connect the wallet, press the mint button, and then some of the 1 or 2 of those will go through. But this time I was waiting for like half an hour. I was trying to mint. I had
And it
like
wasn't
20
working.
tabs open and nothing worked. And people
Was it
said,
because
oh,
of the, go ahead.
yes, some people were using the programs, the and or where you can mint like 5 transactions at a time. And if you have enough Solana, then it can go through. But also it was just the fact that the network as a whole was stressed, and then also the specific validator that they were using was also stressed. And so the transactions dipped
So
down
it's
to like,
also based on the geography. It's also the geography of where they are on the planet.
I think like they were joking in one of the groups that like, oh, this person must live real close to the server because they were able to get 18 or something, and other people tried 100 times and they couldn't get one, or maybe they got one out of every 20 or something.
Wow,
So
that's really interesting. So
yeah,
if you think about, there might be, let's say right now it's low stakes bullshit because it's like, it's just right now, maybe the highest stake thing is um the dragons or whatever, some ape thing. But let's say we're in, day point one or whatever. It's like we're not even at the beginning of what is possible with NFTs and minting and all this stuff. Let's say the value, so like it doesn't really make sense even for a $50,000 dragon NFT. You're maybe you who's like it's early days, you might fly to like Dubai to be closer to like a validator, right? Or you might fly to London if you know that, if you're like sure that it's going to be worth $50,000, right? You might spend, 1,500 on a round trip ticket or something with
mhm.
hotel and everything included. But uh I think in the future, if Solana continues to be, or whatever the next Solana is, whether it's Avalanche or whatever, if there are going to be like major chains where most of these mints are going to happen, and there are clusters of, you can see on the world where are the validators and what's the speed, there may be the same phenomenon that happened with hedge funds, where there was this whole thing post 2008, where I forgot that book, Michael Lewis wrote about it. It's about high speed trading, and what they did was they co-located their servers at the Nasdaq, right? And then the Nasdaq said, no, 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 we just we slow down everybody to have equal speed by like having a bunch of like fiber rolled up. so that like even if you're next to, if you're in New Jersey, or if you're like right in their server room to execute the trades. So that's what they claimed, right? But there was a huge advantage of basically like front running trades. And now it sounds like there's a new tool that's showing up, which is what, like an auto minting tool.
There's a few. There's ones where they can mint one per wallet, but you don't need to go to the website. You can just mint straight from the tool, because they are extracting the candy machine data directly from the blockchain. So sometimes people set up multiple candy machines for the mints. So there'll be like 5 for one. And so it's up to the individual projects to kind of figure out which one is the real one. So they also
Okay, the
have this
real
thing.
question is why was why was my employee not there minting?
Oh, this one was an absolute mess, and I wasn't really sure about this one either. There's one that's happening today actually that I'm really excited about, and it's not too big, so it shouldn't be as a mess, as messy, and also that project. There was this game that got really popular on Ethereum. This one NFT project called Wolf Game, and
I think I
it
heard
had
about it.
people, yeah, who were, you got NFTs, and there was a bunch of sheep, like 90% were sheep and 10% were wolves, and the sheep would just generate a specific token every day, and by you staking them. So you stake the sheep, then you're earning this token, and by themselves, the wolves had a specific chance of stealing the wool from the sheep, and then you and like this had monetary value. So it was a way like the wolves, you could just passively let them sit there, and then there was maybe like a 10% chance or something of them stealing the wool. But when people tried to pull the unstake the sheep, they're trying to unstake the sheep so they can get the wool, they can get the token, there was like a 50% chance that the wolves would steal it in that transaction. So there's kind of like this whole game theory aspect to it. Like, do you leave it in
Okay.
to
Yeah. It's like they're
stake,
taking
or
that those,
yeah? And so it's like it's
taking
very
those Psych
common.
101, those Psych 101 examples and like gamifying them. Like,
Yep, yep. In a simple way that people can understand and that they can also potentially financially benefit from. So this was like the first one that had a demo on Solana, but it's been total, just a huge mess this whole time. And I think it's because they rushed their product too much. Even if they have an idea that they knew would be popular, it was still a mess. I was whitelisted for this project, and they gave me 10 minutes beforehand to mint, and I couldn't get a single one. And then I kept
wait,
trying
why?
for,
Why
because
couldn't you get one in the 10 minutes?
because their whole thing was way too stressed. Like their system was too
Oh,
stressed. The
the transactions couldn't go through.
Yeah,
Were you
yeah.
doing this on Ethereum or on Matic or what?
On Solana. This was on Solana.
Oh, I thought you said it was an Ethereum based game.
Oh, okay, yeah. The wolf and sheep thing. So this project that I was trying to mint was a Solana clone of that called Cop
Oh,
Scale.
okay, okay. Yeah, I think people don't quite understand that like the if the I have that on my Discord. I have that whole like L1s, like I just like separated out just a room just to debate L1s, right? Which
Mm-hmm.
the classic debate on the L1 is, okay, Ethereum has the ecosystem and Matic has the low fees, which is like, and so you can it's Ethereum plus Matic or Polygon, whatever, you can basically have the same speed and efficiency as Solana. And I think their argument is basically like, let's first get, let's maximize what you can do as one chain before you start sharding, right? But then here's the thing is like everybody in Ethereum is saying, well, we have all the games and the programmers and all the apps, but there's a massive amount of basically anything that works in Ethereum will immediately, someone is going to be like, all right, this human behavior, their demand for this game or human behavior, I'm immediately going to make a Solana version, and it's going to be like fast and cheap. So like it's the exact same thing but better. It's like any app that and so that's kind of like the thing about it reminds me of the iOS Android thing, which is you better make your game, at least I would say. And the thing is like they're not the same. Like you have to have completely, it's like different languages and there's no overlap, right? And so you have to have like either bilingual teams who can literally program in two completely different languages, or you'd have to have two separate teams coding the exact same user experience, the exact same game, right? There's no what is it like with Facebook, like React Native that can like be split, you can write it in one and it'll go to both Android and iOS. So yeah, this game is like kind of, it's just like one more pebble in the weight in my mind of like, I don't buy that the argument that Ethereum has all the apps and some other L1 isn't going to come by. Like, if it's a way better system, everything that's in Ethereum will be rebuilt on Solana if it works or is even remotely interesting, and then it'll just operate faster.
Did you check out the little post I did about Harmony and DeFi kingdoms?
No, I
So
saw you guys were chatting about it. Explain that.
yeah, so this is this DeFi platform on Harmony network, and their governance token is called One. And you basically have to buy one, and then you can use MetaMask, but they switch to the Harmony mainnet, so you don't have to pay gas fees in Ethereum. You pay the gas fees in One, and they're really small. It's like Solana size gas fees. But basically, what they did was they gamified DeFi, and so you have this. You go to this website, and then you have your MetaMask wallet that has one in it, and then you open up this game, and it literally says play. You press play, and then you connect your wallet, and then you enter into the game, and then you pick your character, and then you pick a username, and then you can go into this world where it's like uh there's it's all like pixelated, kind of top down Zelda-esque art style, where you kind of see the land and you see the people. And so there's like a bank, and then there's gardens, and then there's a marketplace, and then that's all the DeFi stuff. So you have to go to the marketplace to swap your one into their cryptocurrency called Jewel. And then you can go to the bank and stake that Jewel into the bank. And then you can go
So
to
is it
the
like a
garden.
child's learning? It's like a child's learning game
It's
of how to become like a savvy DeFi crypto trader, but it like with like, oh, so well, that's what you mean when you say they gamified it.
well, and the other part
Wow, that's
is
really, you're actually staking and doing real things with real tokens, real
yeah, they just split it
ERC
in this
tokens
way.
or
Like you
whatever.
can go to the gardens, and you can turn the jewel into liquidity provider tokens and put those into liquidity pools, and then they're like you're buying the seeds for the plants in the garden. And so you literally, when you want to harvest, you literally go to this button that says harvest, but with liquidity pools, they lock the value in for like 6 months or something. So I won't be able to unlock my uh, stuff in there until like July or whatever. And then the
So there
tokens
really,
in the
it's
bank.
really is, it really is like play to earn.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because there's
You know what I
another
mean?
aspect
Like,
too on top of all of this, where they integrate NFTs, and you can buy an NFT of a hero, and then you can go use the hero on these quests to earn stuff that you can then, like, you earn gold, and then you can buy stuff in the game part of this platform
so
to
here's the
then turn
thing. Okay, so
into.
here's the thing. You're actually um you're getting a tremendous amount of entertainment value, right? From playing this game. So it's not like you can't look at it like I went to see Interstellar and I didn't come out with more money. So I can't complain that Christopher Nolan rug pulled me because I go in there and I didn't make money out of watching Interstellar. No, I am giving money in exchange for the entertainment of the thing, right?
Mhm.
So that aspect of it, we all understand that I shouldn't generate money from that. But then it's like, okay, same with Disney. I go in and I pay Disney because they're giving me some entertainment value for me to play in Disney World, right? However, if I had the ability to actually live in the Disney world and then take Disney bucks and then start to become it wasn't only Disney Corporation that was able to sell things and participate in that in the commerce in Disney World. If it was the other attendants in the place, right? Then it
Mhm.
starts to, this is what is happening with this, where okay, it's coming in with the conceit that like you can uh, do DeFi in this game. You can learn to do sophisticated trading, staking, whatever, but you some percentage of the population that's participating is net contributors. Like they're never going to get any money out of it. They're going to be net losers, and that money is transferred to the net winners, right? Whatever the
Mhm.
percentage is. I don't know if it's like power law distribution where like 10% of the people make all the money and 90% of the people are just losing the money. And you never know what the distribution of these things is, or if it's like 30% and 70% are losing money. But then the game builders, they're taking what, like a marketplace fee,
Yeah,
right? They're
yeah. So
taking,
the
that's how they
staking,
make money.
yeah, and the incentive for the staking is that you make 1/3 of the platform fees, the trading platform fees, going
Wait, you only
into the
make
staking pool.
1/3, they take a 2/3 rake?
It's, or yeah, it's something like that. Yeah, of the trading
They're
fees.
taking 2/3 of the money you're generating and you're taking 1/3.
It goes into a staking pool, and then anytime someone someone takes selects the like claim button, it pays out for everyone all at the same time. So there's like a multiplier, and the multiplier gets higher as more people stake. But then, like, every time someone takes out their tokens, then the multiplier resets back down to one, I guess. Um,
Wow, this is some sophisticated stuff. I'd have to think about that. I'd have to see what's going on. Like it's right on the edge. Like here's a question, right? We know that playing poker is gambling. We know that roulette is gambling, right? We know that lotteries are gambling, right? Because it's but we, are raffles gambling? Like
yeah,
kind of,
yeah,
right? Like we start to get
kind of.
into this gray zone. Like bingo and raffles are half like entertainment, half you know, maybe you could say raffles are way more gambling and like bingo is like also for fun, right? Okay,
Mhm.
you could say that with poker maybe, but then it gets into a zone of like risk taking and gambling are not the same, right? So then like if you're if there's skill involved in it and there's it's not just like pure mathematical luck, then it's like, okay, well then I'm just earning to play, right? So it
Mhm.
kind of gets a little bit confusing. Yeah, that I mean, the interesting thing is that you mentioned how they have their own token to get around the gas fee issue. That's the one big benefit I think in terms of Ethereum that makes a lot of sense to me is when I was listening to the Axie podcast, they were explaining that they had this like jammed up, their user growth stalled out because they were like stuck in Ethereum world. And when they issued their own token, it just exploded again because they
Mhm.
were able to transition their users into their own token that was still like Ethereum based, but they could manage their, you know, it's basically the fees and the speed. Uh, and even if the speed is like incidental, if it's like, you know, 30 seconds versus like instant with Solana or something, the fee is really the bigger driver of like, well, I'm not paying $50 to, you know, that's a huge commitment. Even for rich Western world people, like they don't want to pay like $50 transaction fees. There's very few things you want to pay that much in transaction fees. You wouldn't even buy $1,000 a flight from, you know, Istanbul. You just flew back to Portland, right, for your brother's wedding. You wouldn't pay a $50 fee to Expedia to execute that ticket.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
This platform I think is really interesting because it, like, obviously the barrier to entry is still that you have to find the one, you have to buy it from centralized exchange, then you have to put it in your MetaMask. But then once you get there, like, you can participate in cryptocurrency, in a DeFi platform, in an NFT project that you can do play to earn mechanics. And then also they have their own swap too. And so they have like all of the different elements that
they
people
have
can
their own,
engage
are
in.
they, the game has a DEX built in.
Hmm.
And what can you
Yeah,
swap with?
you can swap with Harmony, USDC, Ethereum, like that kind of
USDC
stuff.
sitting on USDC sitting on Ethereum.
Or it's either Ethereum, it's sitting on Ethereum or sitting on Harmony's own network. But I think Harmony is somehow attached. I'm not sure.
I
I
don't
don't know.
think I think USDC can't be sitting on unless they're like wrapping it or something. Like I think because Circle is the one who they issue their USDC on certain L1s. And so I know it's on Ethereum. I know it's on Solana. I don't. It might also be on like Avalanche. Maybe
Oh yeah,
there
yeah,
might be another
Avalanche.
one. I'd have to. Is it on Avalanche already?
I think so.
We should
I've been
do.
sort of using.
We should do a discussion on Avalanche because it's been on my radar for the last like, whatever 2 months. Same with like Avalanche. Tezos was on my radar for a little bit longer because uh, brother-in-law of my brother-in-law like had mentioned it, and so it's interesting. What other NFT projects are you excited about coming into 2022?
Well, there's the music one, where it's a generative pixel art um, collection and a generative music one. And this one I'm really excited about because they are mixing both. And so they have these generative guys, like people who are playing different instruments. So they have like bass, guitar, drums, keyboard, and
Okay.
they asked musicians to submit music for the project. So I submitted music for this project, and they used our music in the generative collection. So we submitted like 100 stems of each instrument, so 400 stems, and then they have a bunch of the attributes for the art part. And the way that they're going to combine it is if you buy or if you mint four, conceivably they'll all mix together and create a song, because every uh, music file is in the same beat per minute, in the same key, and in the same length of time. So you can basically mix all of these different sounds together and they will still fit into a song because everything is synced up to itself. And so they're animated, and then also you have the music as well. So I'm curious to see how it turns out. And they did this really cool thing as well.
It would be hard for me, so I don't want to like scoff at new types of music because I do enjoy certain types of like house or electronica or whatever. And I don't think it's smart to underestimate the power of like deep learning and machine learning to quickly identify like what patterns uh, trigger dopamine in our brains. And so like, you know, but it does, I still haven't seen the threshold where like some randomly generated music is gonna really make it pop or whatever. I do
I think
think
everything's just
that
25-second
TikTok,
clips.
okay, because TikTok definitely does identify what music is, whatever what, not even just what music, but what segment of music, what clip of the music, 30 seconds or whatever, connects with people on a like it's very good at surfacing random music from the world that the algorithm knows a large number of people will enjoy, or at minimum it knows which ones you will enjoy, right? So like I'm blown away because I deleted TikTok because it was so powerful and like addictive, but like the TikTok's content makes its way into my eyes through Instagram. And so like people will like reload their TikTok clips into like Instagram Reels or whatever. And I'm like, man, this thing is like so powerful. So I do know there's the AI and whatever is like converging on being able to entertain us in a way that rivals like human-based art. So it's getting close, but yeah, that would be shocking if like 400 random stems could generate like wonderful music. If it's like, oh yeah, like people are really simple, like we just need these, like hit these beats and like people will start to like really feel it.
I think it plays on that little like addiction that people have to these short clips. But I don't think people who are involved in this project are really involved in it to see what music is created. That might be part of it, but I think the other part of it is to be involved in something that this is the first one, that like this is the first
Music
generative
NFTs, like
art and generative music combined. So I'm really interested to see how it turns out. And I think it kind of has a historical value as well. And also, I'm financially invested in it already because I get a percentage of the secondary royalty sales. So I kind
if
of did the
you
math.
okay.
Yeah, if you submit the music, so I submitted some of the music that they're using, and I did the math on like for every 1,000 SOL sold of the whole collection, I would basically make like 0.6 SOL,
That's a lot.
0.6 SOL.
That's
Uh,
like 150 dollars or something. How much is Sol right now? $200.
well, it kind of tanked a bit. It's at like
What
it's probably around
is
150 now or something. But
like
but still, like I don't think of things in terms of dollars anymore. I just think of them in terms of soul. I
how
stopped
much
thinking,
Sol can you acquire?
yeah, I stopped thinking about the dollar conversion, and now I pretty much solely think in terms of soul. So to me, like what 0.6,
You know
that's
what's
good.
funny is because, sorry, go ahead. To you,
Oh
point
well,
0.6 Sol. What?
yeah, like because I could mint a whole project for 0.5. You know, this project itself is gonna
Well,
be
part of the
point
issue
0.5.
is you're you're in a you're in a non-US market, right? So you're not in a dollar market. So you're already have been whatever the last 2 years like continuously adjusting relative prices because your revenue streams were coming in dollars. And so you were already having to constantly convert. Most people never are not constantly thinking about conversions, right?
Yeah.
And so you just like pulled out the dollars and replaced it with Sol. And after a while, it started to make sense. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's funny because so like the Turkish lira, whatever has been gyrating, tanking against the dollar. But if and everybody's talking about how like everybody's like the stock market's ripping and all this stuff. And I was like, well, it's not ripping against Bitcoin. It's like, so you can it was this great thing that I wish people in the States had like could like read books or like read history about like 1930s Germany, like the early days of whatever, forget about like fascist war Germany, whatever. Just focus, like people get preoccupied with the horrors of that time, but if you focus on what inflation does, you can
Mm.
the nominal value of the Zimbabwe stock market is like ripping, you know what I mean? But it's denominated in their garbage currency.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that is very important. It's like, well, how many apples can you buy? How many like uh, gallons of gas that has universal pricing can you get? So that's that's probably the biggest thing. That's why I like whatever people are looking at their portfolios and stuff in the early phases of this like inflating economy. I'm like, you're not rich. Just trust me. It's gonna make its way into like your purchasing power has not gone up. Like
Mm.
so
Yeah. I yeah, and I feel like it helps, especially with my day-to-day stuff, if I stop trying to convert it, because then I have a better sense of how to use that in the ecosystem rather than
staying within the
thinking like,
ecosystem.
yeah, rather than thinking like I did the math and I was like, whoa, I've spent like, and my initial investment like in total was about like $6,000 in Seoul, that I've spent total, but I haven't spent that much on anything. Like even a car, the most expensive thing I bought was a $5,000 car, but I've spent $6,000 in this space, but I've managed to turn it into like 10x that. But like
Mhm.
I'm just realizing like, wow, okay, because I'm in this space, it makes me think of it less in terms of the amount of dollars that I'm spending and more just like how can I increase this soul amount. So it helps,
Yeah,
but it
yeah. The
also
total, the total
disconnects you.
soul.
I stopped thinking in
Yeah,
terms of
I mean,
real world stuff.
yeah, that's true. I only really think about uh I do think I do think in US dollar terms now still, but probably at some point I don't know, maybe it'll always be like a reference point for me, but we'll have to see. Like, but you're actively also you're an active like I think you could it'd be fair to say you're like an NFT trader. So
Yeah,
um
I guess.
I mean, there's some buy and hold things, and then there's some like trading thing. You're like in the ecosystem. You're doing the full spectrum, like everything available. You're minting, you're trading, you're flipping, you're investing, and you're like generating uh, token token rewards and staking. You're doing everything. You're because before I think you weren't as DeFi sophisticated,
Before I was
and
kind
now
of doing
you're
DeFi. Yeah. One of the first DeFi thing I did was staking my Cardano actually through the browser wallet, and I didn't really understand that that was like DeFi related at the time. But now I'm like, oh yeah,
Oh,
that is.
yeah.
But yeah, I see that.
What other NFT projects are you like focused on? Because have you seen Nas just he's releasing
Yeah,
his new albums on another audio NFT,
I saw that. Yeah,
and Snoop Dogg
and
is also
he's
on Solana.
yeah, he's doing the thing through Royal, and Royal is
Yeah,
like
have you
browse
studied
royalty
Royal at
sharing
all?
service. I was looking into it because they do this royalty sharing service where you can like basically the royal itself kind of sets everything up, and then artists just go to them and be like, hey, I want to do an NFT and I want to do royalty sharing specifically through my NFT. And so they kind of set up the system for them and just do it, like they do the launch for them.
I mean, I think eventually that's the way it's going to have to work for most people.
Mhm.
Is you don't have the mental bandwidth to do everything. Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like, if you're like a race car driver, you're not also like, we'll have to go like source rubber from a rubber tree plantation in Brazil to like make my tires and all this. No, like there's everybody's going to need to specialize, and people are going to need to focus on what they're good at. And
Mhm.
so that is just the evolution of the ecosystem. And I expect every year, or however you want to demarcate it, that there's going to be continuous improvement in terms of like the tools that like make this usable. I mean, that's part of the reason why I still feel like we're so early, is because it's so difficult to do anything.
Yes.
Solana is a bit of a revelation, because it like Solana feels like the Phantom Wallet and Solana and USDC and some of these other things, they really do feel like, oh, it's not like perfect, but it's way less janky than whatever existed before that. Like I feel like I can at least do some things smoothly here. But then there's a whole ton of other things. Like I still don't know how to personally mint an NFT that's of any value. Like I bought some NFTs, and you and we have this other NFT quote unquote project that we're waiting for to be delivered. And there's no like turnkey solution. All right. And then like when Facebook came around, they're like, well, every single person in the world is going to have a website, and it's going to be like facebook.com/ Kelly Miller. Right. And but then like they took that, and then there's that also converts into the app. And then so do you know this guy? Like I just posted a reels, right? And I made it on my for Instagram, and I made the video. It was yesterday. I just recorded the sunset when I was just chilling on the beach in Bali, right? Recorded the sunset, and I had a video of a storm from before, right? And it
Mm.
was like, and so what I did was I screen recorded. Do you know this? He's kind of blown up on Instagram, named Sick Kick. Do you know who this guy is?
Yes.
He
Yeah.
wears
Mhm.
okay, so he's really badass in one way, which is he samples songs that we all know, and then he blends them, and then he's like doing DJ performance. So there's a visual component to it that's also entertaining. And then you don't know, God knows what race he is. He's like something, but like I think that the pseudonymity that he, with his I'm assuming it's a dude, with his mask on, you don't know who this person is, but like he's sampling Michael Jackson. The one that I used was where he samples Michael Jackson and Phil Collins, right? And then
Mhm.
he's so I took that song from Sick Kick, and I also took uh that thing. It's like I think the song is called like God or something from Kanye, where it's like that famous like clip where it's like there it cannot always be dark, like there's like the light is gonna come or something. And so I use those two clips. Now here's the question, right now on Instagram, I load it up on my reels and their stupid algorithm like let it go through, even though I didn't use their music samples. I used my own recordings of those music samples. A guy like Sick Kick and a guy like me who's like I'm recording from other people's stuff. If I NFT'd those uh that music, right? Or that my Instagram videos. Who's gonna like I would then be like illegally being getting paid from these people, like these other people's work.
Yeah.
Or even today, Sick Kick is recording samples from Michael Jackson and Phil Collins with his own DJing, and he's remixing it. So like, I don't understand what's going on the back end that allows them to get paid, or if he's not getting paid at all from that music.
When the sampling, there's a whole legal framework that's kind of caught up to the whole sampling thing with
That
music
you
licensing
don't
and
have to
stuff.
do it, like it just auto works.
No, you have to go and you have to get a specific license for the sample, and it changed, like it's very specific, and there's very specific ones and there's very general ones, and there's also licenses for streaming as well that you have to get.
Yeah,
So
but how does that even work for you'd have that's a professional level of um work. That's like a day job that you'd have to sit there and dedicate all this time, whereas you're just trying to make a video. And like
yeah,
it hasn't gotten, and to me, you've got this like 100 years of like laws that have become bundled up. And it's like the Gordian knot, if you just start clean with NFTs, that would be the way to do it, right? The whole point of software and bots is look, you figure it out, right? And you might slightly change your choices if the rule on the NFT is like if you sample more than uh 10 seconds or whatever, you could write it into the NFT smart contract, like how much of the song you would end up getting paid. But even today, it's not clear to me how any of this stuff is going to be enforced, right?
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
let's say you pseudonymously mint an NFT with something and then people want to use it. I guess it would be maybe at right now, OpenSea is like blacklisting stolen NFTs. You hear about that?
yes,
So the NFTs still exist uh, in these stolen wallets, like these wallets that are owned by the people who stole someone else's NFT. But it's on that spectrum of like censorship resistance. Like on the one far end of the spectrum is uh, YouTube or Instagram owns your content, right? If you load it up, it's like theirs now, or somewhere in between, right? Or on the other end of the spectrum is like some completely pseudonymous NFT. So we don't know. And then like maybe closer to the middle, just on the right of NFTs, but closer to the in the kind of same centralized exchange, like OpenSea is just a centralized exchange for NFTs. So like the
mm,
difference between OpenSea and Coinbase when they eventually open up their NFT market is not going to be much different. They'll still control what they allow to be exchanged on their marketplaces.
mhm.
So yeah, it's
It's up
still
to the
very opaque.
individual marketplaces to verify the collections. But just because a collection is verified, it doesn't really mean that it's like not a rug pull. You know, like there was a project like that where they took the mutant bored apes and they literally like flipped the picture. So instead of them facing left, they're
Oh
facing
yeah.
the other way. And they uh they sold them on Solana, and people bought a bunch of them. Even though they knew that like this is nothing, people were still buying it. So
Wait,
people
wait,
still
wait.
made money.
And then that, I mean, that's like you, right? Like you have your rating system of like high level of like trust and enthusiasm, and then low level. And if it's cheap enough, you'll like, I'll take a low risk, low stakes, speculative investment, even though, and so, but okay, so some people are, and then how can they be, who's verifying them? If you're saying
The
they're verified, but
individual,
they're,
it's just what all they're verifying is the metadata of the project. So they're not actually verifying that the project itself isn't like a derivative or some kind of ripoff directly of, of a project. They're just verifying that it is in fact on the blockchain and it is the real listing of this project. Like it's not a fake listing. So there
I'm
is
still
gonna
not
have to
clear.
be a
Like,
regulatory agency
can
somewhere
you,
in the line.
yeah, can you, and if you can NFT Michael Jackson's Beat It. And then,
And then you could, if someone wanted to buy it, like you would make like literally SoulSea is like where everyone dumps their NFTs that get rugged or the BS ones, and you could literally do something like that. I mean, people those are the right click savers, you know, people
this
do that.
this reminds me of, this reminds me of uh, when I first went to China, they had this DVD. Like we used to, when I would come back and forth from the US to China, like we would go DVD shopping, and this was like the internet wasn't fast enough to stream movies, and so we would, you'd still use the internet for the news and emails and stuff, but it wasn't like for streaming, and so you'd still buy like DVDs, and it would be like really, they'd have DVD shops everywhere, and then they had this like big market, right? And we would go there, and it had this big banner over the top of this market. It was this open air market. It wasn't like like an individual shop, and it said uh, uh, buying and selling something like copyrighted material is illegal, and buying and selling DVDs is illegal. It was like put up by the government, but it was. That's where we were going to. It's like over the illegal DVD market sales place is a sign that says it's illegal, which
Yeah.
was like, okay, we're gonna like give you this like nominal thing that says it's illegal, and then we're just gonna like, the whole point of why we're coming here is for that. And
Yeah,
so
very
I
similar.
Soul Sea sounds like one of those type of places. That's what like imagery came to my mind when you told me that, which is like everybody's selling their rug pull shit, and it's like, yeah, maybe it's valuable. Like, I don't know, why did I find those tomatoes valuable? Like, I'm looking for more interesting NFTs, to be honest. Like, maybe, yeah, go ahead.
I think that that's definitely part of it. The bootleg aspect. I just found out that in the market next to me, they sell uh, versions of Microsoft Office for like a third of the price or less, but they're just copies. And I was like, wait a minute, like you can just download this through torrent yourself. But these people do that and then they sell the product to people in a store. And
But
I
don't
was like,
know that
what?
they can just download it themselves. Yeah, I had a friend. He would sell real authentication codes for Microsoft,
Uh-huh.
like, because Microsoft would try to. There's a thing called in economics called price discrimination, and it's like, you understand this concept to some degree, which is like when you go to a movie theater, they're like, okay, if you're under 12, you get children's price. If you're over like 55, you get senior citizens price. And the reason is like, how is this even like legal? That you're just going to charge someone else because I'm 54 and they're 55. I have to pay $20 and they pay like 12 or whatever. And so like the reason is they're trying to like segment out the market and capture the people. Like, if you look at a demand curve, there's some percentage of the people who will pay a lot, and then there's another segment who will pay this much, and so like that's how they're like able to get around it, is to like at
Mm,
least do broad cuts of the market. Yeah, no, that's interesting. Yeah, my imagination is that like right now I can see how YouTube redirects the money to the people who prove that they own the music or they own the copyrighted content. So they can the person who has the copyrighted content can say either take it down or just redirect the money to me. And now everybody's learned, don't take anything down, leave it up there and just have the money redirected to my pocket because it's like a different flavor of it.
Yeah.
I made that Snoop Dogg thing and I got like 10,000 views on it. And I don't care. I'm not trying to make money off of it. I was trying to like draw people to this channel. And
Hmm.
so I'm probably going to make more things like that because now I realize they're not taking it down. And so it's like, okay, great. Like, whatever. Um, no, it's interesting. So I always think like maybe it'll be services like Spotify or Audius or whatever the next thing is like where everybody will converge on, because there is going to be, in my opinion, unless there's um, some kind of sophisticated user interface that is able to bypass it, there are going to be, in my opinion, agglomeration effects. That's like, it's not like people are going to have 1,000 apps in their phone, you know?
Mm,
So they're going to have, and you still want to have algorithmic personalization. Have you ever tried to use YouTube on like a incognito browser? It's terrible. Like I've gotten used to using YouTube that's customized for what I want with my
yeah.
channels and everything. And so like I
Hmm.
don't, there's like I don't want, when you go to a restaurant, you don't want random assortments of like liquids and meats and protein. You want specific, curated, cooked in a certain way type of like thing. And that's kind of what the benefit of um the experience on, Spotify or whatever gets better as it like learns you, or TikTok or whatever it is. So I think maybe it'll be like that. NFTs end up disaggregating all of the lawyers and all the middlemen, but the end user experience is still going to be, will still have a few big gatekeepers. But the big difference is that the gatekeepers will not have the power like the next version of Twitter that's NFT'd or tokenized, or the next version of Instagram or YouTube or Spotify. If Spotify blocks a bunch of legitimate stuff, like they try to like censor, like we don't like Joe Rogan's like random podcast that people didn't like, right? Then or they or like Trump doesn't own any of his followers, right? He was
Yeah.
leasing those followers, and the second Twitter cut him off, it's not like he could just port over his, like when my phone was stolen, right? Thank God for iClouds, because when I just buy a new phone, I can just like reload all my contacts, right? And
Hmm.
so I could port my contacts over to the new device, whereas uh, Facebook, Twitter, and all of these other things, you don't port over your followers. So you can't just like Trump wasn't able to just spin up, instead of Twitter, he couldn't spin up Twitter. Remember the Trump family? Did you hear about this? Like his great grandfather came and his family's name was Drumpf, and then he changed
Yeah.
it from a D to a T. Yeah, yeah. Okay. So like, anyways, that's just thinking out loud. That's kind of what I
There's
think might
actually a
end up
version of that
happening,
being created right now.
which is
And
what.
it's called Rug Radio. And this guy, Farouk.eth, he's like a big crypto person in the Ethereum space. And he knows a bunch of people, and he is creating a decentralized media platform. And they have all these plans where people they interact with it, from my understanding they interact with it like a social media, but they own all of their own data and they own all of their own content, so they can actually like sort of benefit from that somehow, conceivably. I don't really
But then
understand that.
whose responsibility is it to route the money in the right place, or not have like uh uh what is it, what did you call it, not have the a rip off version of um Michael Jackson's Beat It, right? Like,
Yeah.
is it going to be this guy's responsibility, this guy's centralized platform, or is it going to be on the user? Like, we know that we're not supposed to download the Matrix on BitTorrent, right? So then that we're gonna go back to pre-streaming, where like the content owners are gonna like are like gonna sue them.
No, I don't really I don't know. I don't really I think there's a lot of things that need to be worked out, but I think their big focus is like we want people to own their own data, and they don't want to like have it being profited off of by somebody else. Like there's probably a way that they directly can profit off of their own
I
once
honestly
they've
think
collected.
the next, you could literally just make a like a like a UI for UI, like complete clone of Instagram or TikTok, but have
Mhm.
it only be NFT based stuff, and have it like tokenize you. Let's say you don't want to do directly on Solana, but like you do a token that sits on Solana. So you get control of your own, like this DeFi game, right? But it's powered by like the transactions and whatever, and the money and everything is routed through that way. Like, I'm waiting for that next version, because I tried to use the Bonfida um, uh, messaging. It was like kind of like it was kind of like a Twitter or like a Discord or a group chat, but it was like through Bonfida as like UI, using, you
Mm.
were supposed to use, and it was like their UI was janky as hell. It was like what classic, like, like engineers and coders, they like have if you ever go to like personal websites of like a coder who's like a brilliant genius, their website looks like it's from the 1990s. It's like ugly as shit. It's just like random lines, and you're like, oh, okay. There's a huge difference between like a designer and an engineer. Like, you rarely are they overlap. Like, I think Tesla,
Mm.
Elon Musk's genius is he actually is quite has quite good taste. And so like uh they have like really good hardcore engineering on their products, and like, Apple's classic like that. Like, they have hardcore, like Apple's stuff is technically the best, and their UI and everything is usually very slick. So yeah, no, that'll be interesting. Are there any last projects that you're looking at for 2022? I think 2022 is going to be the year of music NFTs. If I can
Yeah,
copy one from Twitter.
yeah. A lot of people are kind of. I actually joined a Twitter space a few days ago, and it was about these two kind of decently sized artists doing a Twitter space and trying to highlight people's audio NFTs that they minted and that hadn't sold. So they were trying
Oh, there
to
was like a
portray
marketing
them.
event, basically.
Yeah, yeah, it was kind of like you could join the space and you could show them your music. And uh, I actually shared a piece of mine because I wanted to see what they thought. And everyone else in the space that were doing it on Ethereum. Like nobody was doing it on any other chain. And some people in the space didn't even realize that they didn't really get the whole concept of audio NFTs. Like maybe somebody had done this for them, and so they were just seeing this as a marketing thing. But
Oh,
I
they're
saw
really
a
early under.
huge, yeah, in their journey, yeah. And so but I saw a huge market for porting those people over to the other chains and getting them off of Ethereum, because they're not selling their stuff for a lot, they're selling it for really cheap.
Yeah,
And
think about
and
that, man. Like, this, what I'm saying is like, if you're trying to sell, if you're trying to go at, like, first of all, the iTunes experience is 10 years in the past, right? So like buying a
Mhm.
song for $1 or whatever, that's like from the early 2000s. Nobody wants to go to that world, right? And that's what they're,
Mhm.
and so like they're like, okay, well, even if I sold my NFT for like $1, right? Like, that's $50 in gas fees. Okay, so like, I'm not like, the
Yeah.
buyer is not going to do that, right? I'm not buying like the Beatles collection. I'm buying a single song or an album or whatever, right? And first of all, like, it's not like if this had come out like 20 years ago or even 15 years ago, where there was an inbuilt base of people who were conditioned to buying albums, that even maybe you could port those people over.
Mhm.
Nobody under 30, especially nobody outside of like the Western world, even remembers what albums were or CDs. And like listening, I remember listening to Eminem's like latest the Marshall Mathers one, and you would listen to it in order in the
Mhm.
CD because it would like one song would flow into the other, and that was it would be like, at the time, at least in the first time when you're listening to the song, it's you would listen to it in order because you didn't they would all flow together, and it would be the equivalent of reading a book out of random chapters. It's like, no, like listen to it in one flow because the skits and stuff play into the next song and all that. So, but now we're in streaming world, right? And everybody's streaming on whether it's YouTube, TikTok, and then obviously when you're just doing straight audio, it's like Spotify. And uh, if you're trying to tell someone, okay, well now there's this new thing, Web3, where you mint NFT songs, and then you're like, okay, well then like now I have to like buy an individual song. So like the NFT is not really for the consumer, right? Unless you're just trying to, especially for songs. Like you can buy a visual thing because that's yours and you want it to be unique. But songs are the opposite of unique and individual. Songs are for us to like listen to together, the exact same song, so we can sing to it together. It's
Yeah.
one of the only cultural experiences where nobody wants to be separate. Everybody is trying to literally harmonize to get on the same page. Everybody knows the experience is horrible when it's like nobody knows. Like that's why when you go to clubs or concerts or whatever, the experience is so much better when everybody knows the songs, right? So
Mhm.
like, uh, so in that sense, the audio NFT is very different than the video NFT or the image NFT, right?
Mhm.
Because the audio NFT is really going to be, how would you put it? The audio, well, it's not, the music part of it is not going to be like one of one. You're going to want to have one for everyone. And then maybe the
Mhm.
NFT part would be the image or the ticket or something else. I think like as we're talking about it, it really makes me think like audio NFTs are going to be very different. The properties are going to be completely opposite.
Yeah. My idea is for my projects at least is what I'm doing is I'm taking a picture. For now it's just a static picture, but it connects to the song in some way. So the visual evokes certain emotions that the music piece as well conveys in like so this is kind of how, and they're only about a minute long
Oh,
clips
so
that
like the
can
album
really,
cover of the Beatles crossing whatever Abbey Road or whatever, right?
yeah.
So
So
like
you have
you're
an
like
image.
taking the idea of the album. So wait, the album covers will all be different? Are you doing 1,000 different images and then the song is the same and then
No,
1,000
I
different?
would do different pieces of music with uh different photos or animations or something.
So
So it would all be one
you're
at
kind of
once.
going the opposite of what I was saying though, right? Because then you're saying this guy owns one song. So from a consumer
You can do
perspective,
prints too, where you have one is like the master and you do collections of multiple copies. So that's another thing that you can do where if you want to sell like multiple copies, but it is going to have to somehow uh, fit into this space where you can combine things in a way that are unique but still listenable. And this is where I think that combination of AI music and like people's music that they are creating, but then the computer is combining it somehow in a way that fits a certain aesthetic. And or you have what's also happening in the metaverse spaces where they are using audience as like a radio station. So you can import a radio into your the digital space, and then you can then have that space playing in the digital space, that music playing in the digital space.
But then are those people getting paid or what? How does the money work?
With Audius, I really don't like how it works because it only benefits the top tracks. So if you are in
There's
specific,
that power law dynamic that we were talking
yes, yeah, and so it's exactly like
about, which is very
Spotify.
that's part of that's yeah, that's part of, I think that that's the thing that I'm the argument, or that's the thing that I'm thinking about right now as we're chatting, which is the power law dynamic of everybody getting on the same page for certain musics is uh, uh, is a feature, not a bug of music, and that it can't be individualized for it to, like, when you individualize music, it reduces the quality because you're removing a big aspect of why we like music. So we might like an individual song, just us, but I think most people, it's a shared experience. So then I'm trying to
Yeah,
think, like, yeah, I really do think that um with the visual art, specificity and one of one makes sense, but with the audio part, it's not a consumer thing, and it really should be only really marketed to, like, it's eventually, I think, only going to really apply to investors,
mhm.
like
Or
people.
artists themselves, people who
Yeah,
make art.
artists themselves, like, who want to just bypass the studio system and stuff. They need a way to get the royalties without, and they can just cut out like 20 middlemen and all these like systems and all these giant companies that have cropped up. Spotify can stay there, but between Spotify and the artist, there's like 1,000 hands. So I think that's really, and so then, like, that's really the thing. Like, I could then buy Kelly Miller's latest album, right? You would be happy to, or like, let's say I bought one song from you, you would be happy to sell it, and then let's say your NFT had the royalties in it or whatever, and you'd make money. You'd be, and then let's say I invested in it, and then it became a hit. I would make money, and then you would make money on the, because you'd keep getting royalties, right? And then you would make a lot more money on the, what is it, like, the live thing, like going live
Mhm,
and touring or whatever. Yeah,
mhm.
it's something that's still evolving. I'll have to think about it, because, or at minimum, you could make a lot more money on sampling, like if you do have a
Which is
hit,
what
and
people
then
do. Yeah, they
would
NFT samples, and then people can then use them in other things. So they can have royalties embedded it, or they can give the royalties away for the samples specifically. Illmind does that, where he'll make drum
is which
tracks.
is this which is the stems that you're talking about.
Yeah, yeah. So but basically, what I did for the Pixel Bands project is I created a 25-second guitar sample that they then use in the project. But I am like benefiting from the royalties of that sample that I gave. So
Yeah,
that's
this is
that's
going to be
one
really,
way.
really interesting. We should, you know what, the next time you should walk us through the, like, the platforms you're using, and maybe we can compare what are the options. I'd like to see, like, why Nas chose the one he's doing. I know the most obvious reason is why he chose the project he's releasing his album on is because he's an actual owner and investor in that project, and he's trying to, like, he's trying to jumpstart that ecosystem or the network effect or whatever for that business by releasing his new songs on there. Although I'm not trying to be a hater, but, like, 50-year-old rappers releasing new music is probably not going to be like who knows, maybe he'll be like Madonna or Cher, who, like, had like number one hits in their 50s. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But, like, rarely, like, I would be like Snoop Dogg has had the longevity of I don't know who, but like someone he's like he hit it hot when he was like 18 or something, and he's old. He's old for like a hip hop artist that a 20-year-old would listen to, but he's still like relatively. So I don't know. Like to me, there's certain kinds of music that like it's partially an age based thing. It's not like Neil Young singing Old Man. Like Neil Young when he's like 70 singing Old Man is almost as good as when he was like 25 and it came out with it, right? Like, but uh there's something about like when I see these like fat old rappers and they're like rapping like I don't know. That's just me. The song, the lyrics don't match the image. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
I don't
They're probably just trying to leverage their fame to like bring awareness to the platform and stuff. I don't know. There's definitely a lot of kinks that need to be worked out, and people are gonna have to try to experiment a lot and stop thinking of the old ways of doing stuff. And that's really exciting to me in general, just trying to think more and more about how can this space be used to come up with new ideas rather than just copy old ones. And and musicians too are guilty of the same thing as well, where we tend to hear and think of music like musicians, not like normal people. And so the things that are interesting to my ear and to my like composition brain are not going to be as interesting to someone who just cares about how this song makes them feel or the rhythm or something. Like I don't always understand why certain songs get popular because they're so simple, because my brain wants things to be complicated and sound technically interesting, because I'm thinking of it from the instrumentalist perspective. So, like, musicians have
you
that
know what
same kind of thing.
I totally agree. And I remember when you're saying that, it brings back a clip of Christina Aguilera from like the early 2000s, and she has this like super powerful voice, and she's like it's a very unique mega talent voice, right? But like her most popular songs were these like super wispy where she's like dialing it back like 95%, and they're like very catchy, like Genie in the Bottle and all these things. And like she's having the most fun going like that hardcore like where she's like full throated like screaming, and she enjoys that, and like nobody wants to hear that. Like that's not connecting with you. I mean, a little bit, right? Do you know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
so I remember seeing what was that show with who was that singer who married what is it called, Newlyweds? Who is the singer? She was famous. It was like a reality show. She was married to like Nick Lachey, and it was an MTV documentary recording their first year of marriage.
Oh, Jessica Simpson.
Jessica Simpson. And in one of the episodes, they're like recording her new album, and she's like going full throated, like showing her range and all this. And the producers like, yeah, can you do that like in like a calm way, like just like and that's the thing is like if you have all this like talent, you really want to like demonstrate it. And then the thing that most people like is like sometimes it can be it's not that you know
Mm-hmm.
the counterpoint to something like that is actually when like Whitney Houston she like has that like song. Do you know what I'm talking about? That really famous, what's that song from Whitney Houston where she like starts low and then at the end of it she's like getting it like full, but she brings you along like step by step, and then it makes sense. So I don't know. This is my amateur ear on music. Um, but I 100% understand that you know what artists think is amazing. It like you have to have so much sophistication to be able to appreciate what an artist can hear. And then even then sometimes I think sometimes really sophisticated artists don't understand that like other people don't have the ear, like the physical capacities to even understand what they can't hear what you're hearing. There's a reason why you have a talent and nobody else does, or a small percentage of people.
And engineers and crypto people do the same thing. Like they're so in that space, and they're so their head is so like engineering or coding based, where they can't see the UI side of it. They can't
Yeah.
see the like the mass appeal side. A lot of the people in the NFT space that I'm seeing are either people who are brand new to the space, or people who are crypto early adopter people, or people who are finance bros. And so it's kind of like none of them are
Yeah.
really creatives, and they appreciate art, but they don't appreciate it like the way that I see things, or the way that they appreciate music, but they don't hear it the way I hear it. And so like
Yeah.
I have to remind myself, like I can't think like any of these people. I have to think like the normal person who doesn't really know how to do much or
Yes.
hear much. Right.
Yeah, yeah, that's a talent. It reminds me of when my family, we bought a rehab building that after I think it was like in 2010, it was like a rehab, and so like it had been this lady had lived in it for 50 years, and then she died, and then like some contractors bought it, and they were all like living in it, and they were just using but they were like construction workers who knew how to build like beautiful, sophisticated buildings and all this stuff, but like the building that they lived in, they were like, you know, construction engineers or whatever, and so they just there was a pipe that needed to be redone, so they just took the pipe and like ran it through the middle of the kitchen and then like put it in, and it was like functional. And it was one of those things where I was like, only dudes in construction could think like this was even remotely acceptable, to just have like a open pipe in the middle of like, yo, you whatever, you just duck under it, what's the big deal, like.
Really?
Yeah, it was one of those stupid things that I was like, that's so funny. Like I could totally, I've dealt with people like that sometimes, where they're like, what's the problem, like I can do, just, you know, dip under. You're like, no man, we're not gonna have a pipe running in the middle of my, you know, I noticed this pet peeve when I'm in the States, where there's like power lines everywhere. And I'm like, you know, it would be wonderful to just like look up and not see wires. Like,
Yeah.
why can't we bury them like they do in Europe? And they're like, oh, well, that's expensive. I'm like, well, our per capita income is like 50% higher than like most of these places. Like, we can bury the lines. Like, I don't know what you think like it costs, but like, you know, anyways. And they're like, oh, it's fine. I'm like, God, it's so dystopian and ugly. But I'm like, how do you explain what is beautiful? Like, there are some things that are like not subjective. It's objectively more pretty to look at a tree than to look at power lines. I don't know like who's gonna vote for like ugly, you know. So there are some things that are objective in art.
Yeah. I think we have to make it for the lowest common denominator, the person who knows the least, or just wants to see things in more of a simple way. And I think that's the biggest thing that's missing from crypto as a whole, is that it's still too complicated and too hard. And
Yeah.
so what I'm working on with these classes is I'm working on ways of explaining things that, for one, cater to non-native English speakers, and for another thing, cater to the people who don't know anything. So I'm trying to analogize it, but also like use other modes of explaining things that really make it as simple as possible and engaging too, not just kind of comparing things to normal,
You
because you
know,
can't really do that.
one of the things that I'm really excited about with NFTs is like with Instagram and YouTube, right? We already now have a sense that the long tail of selection, it's like, yes, everybody enjoys, or most people enjoy the Marvel movies and the big highly produced media content, right? The big things that like Disney or whoever are putting out, Universal. But and those can get a lot of eyeballs and do generate a lot of money, but what's become super obvious, like with Instagram and YouTube and these other things and TikTok, is that there's a long tail distribution of like niche things that you like, that maybe you find useful, that there are certain people in the world there's that can aggregate those people, and it's worth your time to produce it, right? So I'm in Bali and it's filled with Instagram models and content creators and all these lifestyle people who are constantly using beautiful visual backgrounds and the brand of Bali as like, so people can FOMO fantasize about what would be nicer when, like, because everybody understands this concept of like Bali and beach life and all that stuff, right? So this place is filled with Instagram influencers and stuff, but you basically don't get any money until you cross a threshold. I think on YouTube it's like 10,000 views, and on Instagram I have a friend, she's an Instagram influencer, and I think she has like she's like a Russian model kind of person in she has like 30,000 followers, which is not a lot. Like that's not much. But like she was able to make like at about that level, you can make like $200 a month in ads, right? And so that's not a lot of money, but if you can, one of the things that I think NFTs can do, and so like, and also like, I think YouTube is the most generous. They give you 50% cut. Uh, Instagram, I think maybe gives you like 10 or 15% cut, right? It's something low of the ad dollars that they're generating off of your content. If you can, what I think NFTs will do is dramatically lower the threshold you'll need to get enough, like $200 a month for that person was significant to like make a big dent in their rent, right? And if well, your sneeze was silent.
I
I
didn't
didn't
do
hear it
it.
at all.
I caught it.
Oh, you
I
caught it.
caught
Okay, I was like,
it.
wow. I was like, how did you like? Anyways, so if NFTs can cut out some of those middlemen, and you can now dramatically lower the threshold of followers you need to make some amount of money off of it, you could imagine that some people will find it lucrative enough that, say, like the same way people make some side hustle money driving Uber or doing Airbnb, they could dedicate some time to generating content that would be useful for even more niches that are not really useful right now, right? So because I'm not making I don't make my money from this podcast that we're doing. I think it's like a useful thing. And so I do it, right? But it's not like my job. But like people like me and other people, a lot of people wouldn't be able to dedicate time to making niche content, like music NFTs, because they need that time to make money. So that's
Yeah.
what I think the long tail of like getting more money into to like more aligning the money with people's content and giving them ownership over their content will probably 10x, or even more than that, the long tail of content. You know what I mean? And so it might get closer to what you're saying, or what you were hinting, that maybe specific music for specific people's is super interesting. Although I'm still not on that camp yet. But like that's kind of where I think it's going.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's always going to be the niche markets and the people who just obsess over those weird little things that maybe most people don't like. But if you can find
Yeah.
your way,
Yeah.
that's the thing that NFTs do, is they pull people in for a multitude of reasons. Some people are there just to make money. Some people are there just because they like the art. Some people are there because they like the person who's creating it. They trust that person. Some people are there because they like the community that they found in this space. They feel like they've made friends, or people can kind of bond in some sort of familial sense through this project. And so you can find ways to directly engage with all these different types of people who are there with different motivations that you don't really have that ability to do in the financial market specifically. So that's kind of the unique
Yeah,
one of the unique aspects as well.
yeah, that's true. Everything from the internet, but more,
Yeah.
really. It's like everything that was happening on the internet, just more of it, and maybe more, it's even more fair. All right, man, this has been great. I did want to mention, talking about niche weirdness on the internet. You saw about that girl who was like hospitalized for selling her farts and NFT, or like she was selling her farts on the internet, and then like she found like she would make NFT versions of it or something,
Yes.
and she went to the hospital. I was like, what? I don't know, anyways.
People find stuff to creative ways to make money.